Hello and welcome back to Heroic Stats, an Any Heroics podcast. My name is Stephen, unlike that weird imposter Stephen that was here last week, and I am, of course, the general of Any Heroics, where we, of course, elect our leaders through the democratic process of everyone picking a chicken from a coop and racing them. I'm joined, of course, today by John, the intern, and Dave Farmer, one of the best British players to ever play at the scene. And we're, of course, here to talk about anything MESBG related, specifically tournament results, a little bit of hobby discussion, and the like. Firstly, I have to let everyone know that we are now affiliated with the wonderful, lovely 7th City Collectibles.
Oh my God.
Now, if you're not aware of 7th City Collectibles, it's a brilliant store up in Nottingham. It's run by Barney Menzies and, of course, Will Champion is store manager. They do all sorts of nerd-related stuff. You can see it all over your screen now. Paints, cards, models, whatnot. Most importantly, one of the things that they do that's really unique is they do second-hand trading. So you can trade in your armies for store credit, which I know John has done.
Or cash.
Or cash.
You can get cash if you'd prefer.
You can buy second-hand armies. That's something that I'm looking to do at the moment. Is I've got about 10,000 points of Tyranids under my bed at my parents' place, which I'm going to make a trip down and hopefully trade them off there. Of course, Will hosts 7th City Collectibles events all over the place in Nottingham and slightly northern. And yeah, lovely scene, lovely people. Very proud to be affiliated with them. Thank you very
So
much.
Lorcana. So when I turn this into a Lorcana channel, you'll know where you can get cards from.
Yeah, absolutely. And they also do really well-priced food that's actually quite nice as well, which is really sweet. So yeah, moving on.
Check out our affiliate link for 7th City below.
Check out our affiliate link below.
Right.
Right.
We should talk about hobby.
We should talk about hobby.
Yeah. Come on, Stephen. Matt would have asked us about hobby.
Yeah.
They actually totally didn't ask us about hobby.
Yeah.
We didn't do that last week. I think Stephen didn't know to do that.
No. It wasn't in the script. I've actually recently painted up almost a full Dragon Emperor army, which is now 100% mine that I'll be using this weekend. Definitely not painted by anyone else on the podcast.
Are you using it this weekend?
I am using it this weekend, yes.
Ooh, that's exciting.
First time in it at GBHL 100. No doubt I will come 7th. I was about to say 17th, and I remember there were only 34 players, so including the ringer. Yeah, I haven't done any hobbying. I am currently in the manic process of organizing my life to make sure I can move, and also life busy. When I'm in my new place in about a month, I will actually have time to sit down and paint.
Lordy.
Interesting.
Also, my girlfriend still has all of my all of the stuff I want to paint. So.
That's very selfish of her. I've got a castle for the tournament this weekend. It's about 2.5 inches, 3 inches square, and it's totally lit.
I'm just going to use a pre-gen bit of terrain for that, I think.
Made out of cardboard.
I can bring you some terrain if you want, Stephen. I've done quite a bit of hobby, actually. I've painted up all the Osgiliath terrain I had left over from my display board, which is hopefully about a board's worth. I just cherry-picked all the best bits, so I had a load of that. I've purchased a new army from 7th City using my store credit that I got from trading in my old army. So I've got a nice meta Isengard 12 crossbow army.
I was going to say, does it happen to be on the podium stats that we'll see later? Yes, of course it is.
And I've just finished assembling 1,300 points of Erebor Reclaimed, which I also got secondhand. So yeah, it's been a busy few weeks hobbying for me.
That is a lot of money to spend on dwarves.
Well, conveniently, it was very cheap because it was all secondhand and
Mm.
dubiously made. But we won't talk about that. What we will talk about is our first event for the weekend, which is the Battle for Bridgetown, held in not Calgary, Canada. That's just a bluff. It was actually held in Portland on the west coast of the USA. 700 points, 5 games. The scenarios were randomly selected with no repeat pools, but we do have the list of scenarios that were played. Round 1 was Hold Ground. Round 2 was Recon. 3 was Lords of Battle. 4 was Breakthrough. 5 was Supplies. They had 36 players. The favourite best painted good army was Jake DeLuey. Apologies about the butchering the pronunciation of that. And favourite evil army was a joint tie between Charles Lynn and Will Morris.
Can I just say, those 5 scenarios are probably like, if I was picking 5 scenarios to play at a tournament, that's pretty close to what I'd pick. In fact, I think that might actually be exactly what I pick, except maybe Recon / Divide and Conquer is kind of a toss-up. Those are all great.
Yeah.
Actually, Capture and Control as well over Breakthrough, because I'm a psycho.
700 points, Dave. Those scenarios, what kind of things would you expect to do well, kind of based on our meta that we have over in this side of the pond?
700 points. I mean, that you could play Isengard into that pretty comfortably. I think Isengard, Spider Queens would do well here just because of Recon and Destroy the Supplies. Those are both great Spider Queen scenarios. Dragon Emperor could do well, although I think 700 is probably not its optimal points anymore. Whatever that light may tell you, I still am not convinced by that. Yeah, I don't know. I do not know. I think 700 points of Ministerialist could probably do a job with the Madrill, but potentially as well. Let's see.
Stephen,
what you got?
You got some notes from the chap who sent this info over about the meta. Do you have that to hand, or don't worry if not? I've got access to it.
I do have it to hand. 1 second.
So
it was Pat Batoli. So thank you very much, Pat, for sending it over. And as previously mentioned, please just message us on Facebook, Discord, YouTube. If you can find my old Bebo account, whatever. We will post about your foreign tournament if you've got it.
If you can find Stephen's old Bebo account, please post it down.
Oh, I deleted that. I deleted that immediately upon rediscovering it. I didn't even look at it. So Western US meta is pretty heavy on shooting and fight 5 until about a year ago, which led to a lot of people playing elves with Kid or Galadriel as a counter. That's where the meta has been for maybe 6 to 9 months. It's now shifting again to counter the elf focus. So I expect to see lots of things which counter elves in the lists.
How do we think that differs from what we see over here?
Well, let's see the list before we talk about that.
Well, as always, we'll cover the best painted armies. So I'm not sure which player previously mentioned brought what, but this is a fantastic looking Watcher built in display board and some goblins. Incredible looking Angmar. Very nicely painted Gullivar with a bit of the glow there.
It's your boy Gully.
Yeah, my favorite.
Minas what? Sorry, John.
Well, it looks like Minas Morgul, but obviously Gullivar's there, so maybe he's on holiday.
It is Minas Morgul. You're right. I was just wanted to check because it sounded a bit like you'd forgotten what it was called for a second there.
No, I stopped myself because obviously Gullivar.
I mean, that's clearly meant to be Minas Morgul.
Was at Minas Morgul or not. Yeah, it's got the little.
Well, like a lot of the Angmar aesthetic and the miniatures is directly drawn from that scene, so I think it's acceptable to say that that's
well, it looks sick
some equivalent building.
I guess this must have been the good army that won. Some really nice kind of elves and bit of a different scheme with the Riven Down and some new Norians. The blending on the cloaks looks really, really good.
Yeah,
Last Alliance.
It's pretty clean. The Last Alliance is good in that setup, I think.
And then an action shot of the third party Watcher. And there's a
That's
crab.
Spider Queen. Whoa.
That's a
think that's actually really nice looking.
That's the crab from one of the AOS, maybe Warcry Warbands or something, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it won Miniature of the Year or something.
The Deepkin.
Yeah,
presumably.
Yeah.
just because, you know.
It looks very cool.
Wow.
So that's enough hobby. We've appeased all the hobbyists like myself. Let's appease the people like Dave and look at some podium lists. We've got third place. We've got Saltman 998's Isengard. He's brought Saruman with Grima, 6 wild men of Dunland, 6 orcs with Spear, 2 Crabane for that insane mobility. Gorolf, 6 wild men of Dunland, 5 orcs with Spear, and an orc with Spear and Banner. The Wild Man Oathmaker, 6 wild men of Dunland, 6 orc warriors with Spear, and then he's got Vrasku with 2 crossbow orcs.
Okay, so
okay,
this
I
is
have to
a
assume.
weird list.
Well, I have to assume one is not speccing into crossbows specifically because they're worried about blinding light being the meta.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, this list is probably a bit less less optimal than I like. But then, I mean, he's trying to get the numbers down. He's got a horse for Grimmer as well, which, I mean, when you count for Saruman and Grimmer, that's 225 points in a not that big list. Like, that's significantly, you know, so it's almost a third of the entire army list. So you kind of, if you want to get numbers, which I mean, 45 is really good numbers at 700, you've got to get it somewhere. But that is a flimsy army. And actually, thinking about it, like if you do match into elves, it's like, hey, what do you want to shoot? My D4 orcs or my D3 wild men? It's like, uh-oh. And there's not, you know, I like the list in some ways. I do think that it would be not that difficult to pump up the crossbows without losing too many lads. But at the same time, like you then end up, that's the problem. Having Saruman and crossbows is difficult because at 700 points there just isn't that much. He's got a lot of might for this, but I don't know if there's a terror meta. I mean, I guess again Kurdan, but I still think that D3 is not the answer to elves.
Yeah, it feels like Saruman has to do a ludicrous amount of work here.
Yeah, and Grimmer is obviously great, especially if you're against a good meta, because a lot of good lists, if they don't have Gandalf or a good side Saruman, you actually can't really deal with him.
Yeah,
actually, Elrond sort of can, but yeah, if you don't happen to roll the 5s on the Wrath of the Bruinen, it's not a great use of Elrond's will. So Grimmer is actually very annoying, and with a horse, he can just pasta.
Yeah, and with the missions that came up, Recon, destroy the supplies.
Well, Grimmer's great in Recon because you can literally get him off the board immediately if you want.
Yeah.
Grimmer can literally immediately escape the board if you choose.
Cool. Should we have a look at second place?
Yeah, go ahead.
You've got some final thoughts, Stephen.
I was just going to say, I am quite interested that this did so well in that it's a very squishy army with not a great battle line.
Yeah.
And the last warband is a little confusing to me, but...
Well, again, you want to use Vrasku because Vrasku is excellent. And the might, having the might, so he's got quite a lot of might, and it means he can afford to spend it, leave his 3 might on Vrasku somewhere. Like you can plop him on top of a piece of terrain or something and just oversee the battlefield and just shoot. And again, I have to assume there was a reason why he didn't opt into maximum or as much shooting as possible. The problem I have with this is the Wild Man Oathmaker is actually pretty nice, and he gives Fearless, and he gives them the Dunland keywords, which isn't super important when you have Saruman anyway. I just don't. I don't know. I don't really get it. I think the Crabane and Grimmer and stuff, like Grimmer is extremely annoying in stuff like destroy the supplies as well, because you have to constantly keep tagging him, otherwise he's just going to destroy supplies, and that doesn't even reveal him as an enemy. He can just do it.
Yeah.
Very annoying. Yeah, I think this must have gone 4-1. I'd be interested to know which one it lost. I think this would have a really hard time winning Lords of Battle, so that would be my guess. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of numbers. 45 models is a lot at 700, so that's probably the basis.
It lost to the list which came first in Breakthrough.
In Breakthrough, interesting. Okay.
Right. Well, before we have a look at that list, let's look at second. It was Richard Lynn of Into the West podcast fame. He's brought Assault on Lothlorien. The leader, of course, is Musger, leading 3 orcs with shield, 2 with spear, 1 with banner, shield and spear, 3 orc trackers and a bat swarm. and he's got an orc captain on warg, with a shield, 3 orcs with shield, 3 orcs with spear, 4 more trackers. Druzag the beast caller, 2 prowlers, 1 goblin with spear, 4 goblin with bow, 5 giant spiders, 1 bat swarm, 1 wild warg, and final warband is a goblin shaman with 3 more prowlers, 2 goblins with shield, 2 goblins with spear, 4 goblins with bow, and a warg marauder. What do we think of this one?
It's not my favorite way of building it at 700. 5 spiders is a little bit insane.
Yeah, that's a lot of points invested in 5d3 2 wound models.
My main problem with spiders, having too many spiders, is you can't enrage more than one of them at a time. So, like, that's tough. Like, a lot of your spiders are just going to be sitting around, or possibly their redundancy, or they're using them to fight battle lines, and spiders just aren't reliable enough fighting battle lines, like I find anyway, using this list. But he's opted, so he's decided not to have the 5th hero. The problem this list often has at 700, I find, is choosing that 5th hero is actually quite hard, because you have to keep your orcs and goblins balanced. I see he's gone for roughly equal trackers and goblin bows, which, like, fair enough. I think the list works that way. I do prefer a 5 hero version of it at 700, but it is pretty hard to get the balance just right. You have to really go low on stuff like the wargs, and like stuff like the marauder and the things like that, you know, nice things that you can't really, luxury things, I would call them. The other thing I noticed about this is it sort of looks like he sort of split his warbands in like to little fighting blocks. So he's got, like, there's a couple of prowlers and there's a spearman, and then the bows are separate. They're like their own thing. And then you've got a couple of prowlers and the shields and spears, and then the bows are separate again. And then in the orcs, you've got a couple of trackers, and then you've got the shields and the spears behind. Like, I see the appeal, especially if you might be getting split up. I do think you can save a lot of points if you choose one way to do it and stick with it. Like, try and get as many goblin bows in as you can while having a few prowlers. That's the other thing. If you drop some spiders, you can afford to have a few more goblins. I'm a huge advocate for no shield on the orc captain, because it's literally 5 points that you just don't need, because you never need him to live, other than in like fog and assassination is the only time it might ever matter. You know, but wasted 5 points, you can have another model. But it's a tough list to build, I would say. Like, it's hard to do it intuitively, and this is fine. It's just, I think with the limitations on orcs and goblin numbers, I think actually the Warg Marauder is more appealing than it used to be. I mean, they've always kind of interesting, but I think the fact that they only count as one model while also bringing 2 bow shots and only 1 goblin is interesting. But I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm super down on this list. I think AOL is still actually really strong. I just think it's difficult to build it, especially at 700, because you run up against the warband size limits pretty hard.
We know Richard's a successful player. We know AOL is a really good list, and that's probably why we're kind of picking apart the minutiae a bit. And
I'm ragging on it. You got too many spiders, Richard.
That one, Dave's afraid of spiders confirmed.
I will hammer that. Well, I'm not, but I mean, Elliot Harry is. He'd appreciate me saying that.
Yeah.
Too many spiders.
Shout out Elliot Harry.
I think
Elliot Harry.
The reason we're particularly critical of this list, specifically North American lists, apparently, is because it just doesn't prescribe to our opinion of what the meta is. So if we're giving feedback on the list and you're like, these guys just criticize our lists, it's literally because we have our own ideas of what's good because of our meta. So if it's good in your country, I'm not going to say that North American lists are all bad. However, historically, British players have just gone over and won over like 4 years in a row.
I want to point out that my criticism of this list are just partly because I have a lot of experience playing Assault on North myself, and partly because I already know it's kind of good. You know, it's going to be good no matter what you do. So, almost no matter what you do. So I'm
it's
just
9 out of 10.
Trying to.
Here's how to just make it that 10.
I'm trying to.
In our opinion.
You know, I think Richard might watch this, so I hope you don't think I'm hating.
Yeah, sorry, Richard. I do like to needlessly flame.
Actually, I am hating. I take it back.
Yeah.
Right.
Moving on to first place.
before we get cancelled by another place in the world.
Marcus Hammond. You
He's
have Angmar with the Witch King of Angmar, of course. Crown, horse, 3 extra might, 4 extra will, 3 extra fates. Gullivar, Terra of Arnor, and a Barrow White. Altogether, I see a lot of orcs. 3 Dead Marsh Spectres, all in the Witch King's Warband. 1 Wild Warg. And 1 of the orcs has a banner, and a couple of the orcs have 200 weapons. Yeah, it looks like your very standard 700-point Angmar list. It's got to be relatively bare bones with what's in it, because you've crammed the Witch King and Gullivar in, which is more than half of your points.
Take Gully and the Witch King at 700, you're not going to get everything you want.
Yeah.
I'm personally on team. I think Orc Captain and Warg is better than a Barrow White, especially in a list like this. But your mileage may vary, and actually the reason for that specifically here is you don't both your heroes kind of don't really want to be being Mike Caddies, and having an extra hero who can do that is really nice.
Yeah, if either of them are calling moves, they're sad. I mean, the Witch King's okay with
the
it,
Witch
but
King
Gully,
kind of can a little bit.
Yeah,
Gullivar.
Gully needs it to be calling combats and mighting rolls.
Yeah, Gullivar is good at mopping up towards the end. If your orcs do the job, which I mean, 42 is actually pretty good numbers for 700. It's like slightly above, I wouldn't say average, but slightly above the sort of level that the 700 meta often falls at, which is sort of 36 to 38 to 40, roughly speaking. This is solid. Obviously, orcs aren't exactly overly beefy, but you can take advantages using the specters to give Gullivar angles. And Gullivar is quite hard to deal with at 700, generally speaking. His magic is his biggest weakness.
The only thing I might do is I might put one of the specters in Gullivar's warband.
Yeah, I agree. I think the specters spread them out.
If you get split up, Gullivar with the specter is absolutely terrifying, to be honest.
Yeah,
not by saying
it
just gives you the threat.
Yeah. Well, it's the full move, the 6 inches, even more than a compel. It's nasty. I do think it's interesting, by the way, that 2 of these 3 lists, I would say, are fairly weak to elf shooting, despite what you were told about the meta. Like, I think both Angmar and that list with the Wildmen are very susceptible to elfie shooting.
I am looking at this list thinking, if you had Kieran, you would poop all over this list.
Well, potentially. I mean,
potentially, yeah. Or a bunch of crossbows, yeah.
Well, I mean, crossbows aren't even, I think, or like, I mean, something like Defenders of Helm's Deep would love to fight this.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact that Gullivar just chucks your boys around. But like throwing spears.
Gullivar. If he obviously there's the whole you've got to get within the range. Any competent Gullivar player shouldn't get throwing speared, except in a heroic move situation. But
it's not so easy to do that. I mean, throwing spears actually have an effective range of 17 if you march. Like that's almost max range Gullivar can be at if he wants to spectre charge. So like it's not outrageous to just march into his face and chuck a load of spears at him, especially now that flying models don't get the benefit of models in the way. Flying monsters don't. So
I think this is a really solid list.
It's a solid Angmar list. I just think it's interesting that you called that meta specifically before we listed these, and then now 2 of them look like they would get beaten by said meta.
I'm just gonna have a quick look at what he played. He played the best painted Numenor Rivendell, funnily enough, at Lords of Battle, and won 6-0. He also played Lothlorien Rohan, which I assume was a Galadriel with Cav line. Destroy the supplies. I think you've got some good tools for destroy the supplies, to be fair.
Lothlorien can be
also
like
beat
Grimbold or something.
Also beat 2 Mordor with what I assume is Spider Queen lists.
The other thing is, this list sucks into like double Wraith Mordor like really hard. If you have Black Numenorians and Rans, they just absolutely beat the shit out of Angmar orcs.
I mean,
and if you
Dave
have
and I
Wraiths,
have faced off
Gullivar
a couple of
can't do
times. With me with Gullivar, him with Black Nums, and it doesn't go well for Gully.
Well, yeah, it's like you Yeah, Black Numb's backed up, but even by regular orcs, just beat the crap out of this, because you can charge them, they can't charge you. If you happen to have Suladan as well, it gets even worse because Suladan has the massive banner effect, and you don't have a shade. So,
Right, should we
I mean,
return to home
clearly
soil?
summer. Yeah,
Any
let's do
closing
that.
thoughts?
No?
Yeah, I like it.
I do like Angar, has a special place in my heart. So our first tournament on British soil this weekend was Journey Across Rohan, a GBHL 90 held at Black Dragon Miniatures in the central region. Gary Sharp was the TO. 24 players duked it out across 4 games at 500 points, playing Fog of War, Hold Ground, Storm the Camp, and Capture and Control. I'm not sure if the missions were predetermined or that's kind of what they rolled. I didn't get a name for most sports, and I don't know if anybody else managed to get a hold of who it was.
I did. 1 second. This is.
While Stephen looks that up, we'll have a look at best painted. I think taking his 3rd best painted of the season is Jack Darlington and his Beornings army. I know the TO let him use the they look like English wolfhounds, as kind of counts as Beornings, which is very cool. One kind of hound master.
What's the anvil?
I guess objectives.
Yeah.
Jack Darlington is actually the man who was A, my Secret Santa, and B, runs, as in he bought for me, he was my Santa. He also runs the Melton Middle Earth community page. So if you're in that area, go check out.
If you're a Melton man,
he also,
check him out.
as evidenced right in front of you, does incredible painting work. As John said, he's won several best painted awards. He does commissions as well, I'm pretty sure. So if you're in that kind of mood, go check him out. He's done some sweet Balrog and dragon work. So yeah. Oh, also his GBHL team name is Boilem Melton Stick 'em in a Stew, I'm pretty sure, which is pretty good. So
right,
yeah,
let's have a look at our 3rd place list. It's something we often see on the podium, extremely meta. A couple of points. This list didn't actually list whether it was Defenders of the Shire Legendary Legion or just pure Shire. I'm assuming it was the Legion.
Most likely Defenders of the Shire, based on what he's got.
As far as I could tell, it was 10 points down. So I don't know if Merry and Pippin were supposed to have horses.
They'll have ponies. 100%.
Yeah, ponies, but it wasn't listed on the list I was sent, but that explains the points deficit. So
yeah,
we've got Merry leading 6 Battling Brandybucks and 3 Hobbit Sheriffs. Pippin, Captain of the Shire, leading 5 Tookish Hunters and 2 Hobbit Sheriffs. Frodo and the Nine Fingers with Elven Cloak, leading 4 Hobbit Archers, 6 more Sheriffs. Holfoot Bracegirdle, leading 6 Sheriffs. Baldo Tolpenny, leading 5 Archers. Farmer Maggot with the best doggos and 4 Hobbit Sheriffs. For those who don't know, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, Holfoot is the chap that gives the Sheriffs early.
Nope. Oh, no, yes, he is. Yes, he is. Sorry, I was thinking Baldo. Baldo is the throwing stones guy who rolls a 6 to hit. Extra traps, yeah. And if he rolls a 6 to hit, he auto wounds with knowing the ways, which is pretty cool.
This is the slightly more competitive version of the all-hero Defenders of the Shire list, which rocks out about 550 points.
My issue with this list, I like this list. I'm really happy that he's played it and done well with it. I'm a big Shire enjoyer, historically speaking, especially. I just want to get on record that Tookish Hunters are crap and you should never take them. Problem with Defenders of the Shire is you are forced to take them if you want to put them in Pippin's Warband. So you can get around that by whacking them in like Baldo's Warband or something. Baldo is a hero of fortitude, so you can do that. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's like season to taste, because it's not going to be highly competitive no matter what you do. I see he's opted for Elven Cloak for Frodo rather than the pony. I see the logic there. You can hide him a bit easier. Personally, I think the pony is better just because you get a slightly bigger area. But again, it's literally like he can't charge, and also pony gets bonuses anyway. So it really doesn't matter that much. He's a 6-inch banner for the Hobbits, if you don't know. He can't even throw stones either because he won't hurt no one. I think he's the only Hobbit that can't, unless you count Smeagol and Gollum as a Hobbit, which is technical, I suppose. Yeah. So you could get another model if you change them drop the Turkish Hunters upgrade. It's useless.
And Farmer Maggot confirmed best model in the game.
Farmer Maggot is a beast. He's better than Boromir. Don't at me because it's correct.
Gripfang
Jacob's
Wolf,
gonna hate it.
in the Farmer Maggot, like you pay 45 points and you get mobility in a list which sorely lacks it. For objective control, I mean, it's no Spider Queen, don't get me wrong, but it gives you the extra options, which is very nice.
It's basically the thing in the Shire list that makes them not feel like the least mobile thing in the entire universe. Because Free Movement Force sucks to play with.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of playing around it. One nice thing about this is because you can't have spears, you have to spread out loads, which means you can sort of envelop. But it does mean that any particular part of your line does get punched through by literally almost anything. So you have to play around your traps extremely effectively because they're a little bit difficult to deal with. And at 500 points, there's pretty much nothing that's going to be matching your numbers other than like Goblin Town.
Yeah.
And as long as you can shoot them, you should body them.
Just very quickly, the most sporting was Sam Terrace. So shout out Sam. Sorry we didn't put you on the actual slide. But yeah, Hobbits. More Hobbits. I love that it's finally Podium this year because Hobbits are fun and they're not as soul-destroyingly awful to walk into as they used to be with their 24-inch bows, bow spam. So yeah, no, Hobbits are good fun.
Yeah, they're not soul-destroying to play into because they're rubbish. Is the real answer. Yeah. But they're okay. They're playable.
You mentioned a soul-destroying gun line. Let's have a look at second place. We've got Ned Merck bringing 32 Minas Tirith models. He's got Ingold leading Guard of the Fountain Court, 5 warriors with shield, 4 rangers with spear, 1 warrior with banner, 1 citadel guard with a horse and longbow, Madril with 1 knight with a shield, 8 Guard of the Fountain Court with shield, 1 knight with shield again, 1 citadel guard with a horse, swapped spear for longbow, a Guard of the Fountain Court with shield, and then 2 Avenger bolt throwers.
Is Ned American?
Yes.
I was going to make a joke about machine guns, but I want to make sure that he's American before I do that. I played against him with double bolt thrower before, and it is surprisingly well. We played in a scenario where you start in the middle, so I was like, "Wow, those are some useless bolt throwers." But actually, strength 7 shots is pretty nasty. And if you roll well with them, like on average, you're going to be getting 6 or 7 shots, hitting on 4s, wounding most things on 4s or better. You're going to be killing 2 or 3 models a turn if you roll well.
Yeah, shout out Ned because he was actually the one that sent me the results. He also rocked up at Masters for a little bit just to say hi, which was nice.
Yeah.
I love the idea of the 50 Hobbit models just looking at this list and being like,
wah.
I mean, you've got to walk
Why is this written? There's 8 Fountain Court with shield, and then there's 1 Fountain Court with shield as a separate line on Tabletop Admiral. On Madril's Warband.
Blame the intern, or we could blame. Actually, no.
I think this was directly sent by Ned. Yeah.
This was a direct copy and paste. So.
That's directly from
red
Ned.
herring. A
we
Ned
can't
herring.
even blame the intern for a second.
Whoa. Actually, it's the same with the knight. Why is there 2 separate knights? That's weird.
But
has he maxed his bows here? I'm not sure he has.
He's got 7 bows out of 32 models.
No, he hasn't. Total. He hasn't maxed them. You can have 9 bows there. Max your bows, Ed. If you're playing double bolt throws, why wouldn't you?
It's a fair point.
I mean, you've only got 6, and that's including the one on Madrigal as well. You could have 10 if you include the one on Madrigal.
Right, Minas Tirith continue.
Also, why are your knights on different lines, Ned? I gotta know.
You've really
what do the
triggered
lines
Dave
mean,
here.
Ned?
What does it mean?
Minas Tirith showing its continued 90 dominance. First place was taken by Ryan Fernandez, bringing Theodred's guard. He's got Theodred with shield and horse, 3 Helmingas with throwing spear and shield, 1 Helmingas with throwing spear, shield, banner, 4 Royal Guard with throwing spears, 2 Mounted Royal Guard with throwing spears and an Outrider, Grimbold of Grimslade, 3 Helmingas with throwing spears and shield, 2 Royal Guards with throwing spear and an Outrider. Finally, Captain of Rohan, heavy armor, horse and shield, leading 3 Helmingas throwing spear, shield, 2 Royal Guard with throwing spear and 1 Outrider.
It's your classic Theodred's Guard do well at certain points. I think this is one of those points level that they do all right at, clearly.
You kind of have to choose at, sorry, at 500, 450 in particular, you can really go like, right, Theodred and one other model, well, either Elfhelm, Grimbald, or a captain, and you're like, cool, this is it. 500, it's a bit awkward because I think if you like max out the 2 war bands, you end up a little bit short, even with a banner and stuff. So at 500, I think I'd be tempted to make that captain of Rohan extremely budget and just throw in a few more guys, like 2 more lads. Like drop the horse, drop the shield, drop the heavy armor, and just keep him at 45, and then you can have an extra 2 models, and then tinker with some gear if you want. Because the captain doesn't get. Oh no, he does actually. Does he get the?
He does, yeah.
No, okay, so he does get the Arise Riders of Theodred rule instead of Theoden, which is cool. And I like the march, but I don't think I think you might be better served with a couple more guys. But honestly, like, I mean, this is a solid list. It kind of does everything you want in a battle line. It's got the strength. It's got lots of throwing spear support. Got the strength 4 from the Helmingers. It's got the Royal Guard to provide the fight 4 and 5 if you're using the mounted ones. Yeah, and he hasn't overspent on Outriders, which I think is probably about the right choice. You have a couple just to sit on back objectives and force people to come to you if they have no shooting. You don't have to walk up. Yeah, it's a nice list. I think 26 feels a little bit small. Also, it always hurts to see 1 point left over, but with throwing spear lists, it's a bit tricky because they're 2 points. So you can't just give another guy a throwing spear.
Yeah, I mean, you could change a Royal Guard into a Helmingus, I guess.
It's all just like tinkering, isn't it? I think for me, I would want to get a couple more models. So I think I'd sack off the horse, the heavy armor and shield, and then I'd use those 21 spare points to get an extra 2 models and make sure I had the right gear that I wanted. Maybe even a couple more Outriders, and then mount another one on my Royal Guard. Maybe it might be the move. And it doesn't, like I said, largely doesn't matter because Ryan's won with it anyway. So good job, Ryan.
Cool. Yeah. Let's have a look at the final tournament of the weekend. This was Middle-earth Games 2, GBHL 80, held at Nightly Gaming in Bathgate. TO was Alan Liddell. They had 32 players, again, 500 points, playing 4 games. They played Recon, Clash by Moonlight, To the Death, and a modified version of Seize the Prize, where there were 5 prizes in total. It didn't have to be dug up, and they counted as heavy objects. There were bonus tournament points for winning specific categories. So these were generally kind of keeping a kill tally of how you killed models throughout the tournament. So 1 for hand-to-hand, which is infantry wounding, 1 for shooting, 1 for magic, 1 for cavalry runes, and then 1 for monster wounds. And if you won this category, you got 3 extra TPs, which was the equivalent of a win. Best painted was Alex Bordas, and most sporting was Kieran Smith.
Alex Bordas is an amazing painter, to be fair.
We've got some photos of his models.
Yep. Oh, Balrog. Let's go. Fish Balrog. Shark Balrog.
Well, it's the Meg,
very
isn't it?
Cool.
So for anyone unaware, the Meg is a film about Megalodon released from the ice after an earthquake. Megalodon is, of course, a super giga giant shark. Mild spoiler for the film, there's actually a bigger shark as well as the Megalodon.
I have actually seen both the Meg films, and I can say they're okay, but they're not bad enough to be good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's not Sharknado, but it's also not Jaws. So
yeah,
it's in between.
Honestly, if it was like 30% worse, it would be way better.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's if that is why he converted a shark Balrog, that is audacious and wonderful, because that is fantastic. I love the tail.
Yeah. Also, shout out Alan Liddell. I remember eating a curry with you at Desolation of Stockport 2015. You probably don't remember, but
Stephen is a very old man, apparently.
Far older than he looks.
Unlikely move.
Let's have a look at 3rd place. It was fan of the pod and world-class reporter David Reed leading.
We should hire this man.
Wait, you guys are getting paid?
Dwarf
So-
Rangers. Woo! I think
bringing-
he's done this pod
so-
before, didn't he? We've done something like this.
Yeah. So Dave's brought his trademark throwing weapon spam Kingdom Memorial list, proving it is in fact meta. He's got Barlin with a dwarf with banner and shield, 3 iron guard, 6 rangers with bow and throwing axes, 4 rangers with throwing axes, 2 rangers with throwing axes and 2-handed axe, a dwarf captain with throwing axes, 3 iron guard, 4 rangers with bow and throwing axes, 5 rangers with throwing axes. So out of his 30 dwarfs at 500 points, only 2 don't have throwing weapons.
Yeah, and
Iron
Barlin
and
used to have
banner.
throwing axes. They just got rid of them for some reason. Very annoying. I want to say that Dave has been he's been basically Barlin's strongest advocate probably ever in these last couple of years. I played
Ali
against him
King
in
will
the
probably
WTC.
relinquish that.
I mean, Ali King plays other kinds of dwarves sometimes. He's never really been a big fan of Barlin.
True.
Specifically, not since the old edition when Barlin was just a better version of a dwarf king. New Barlin is rubbish in a lot of ways, but clearly Dave has, again, he's pushing the Barlin agenda. I think we can all agree that's a great thing.
Love to see it.
Yeah, nothing much to say about this. Well, did you say there was a category for most throwing weapon kills or something? Because if there was,
No, there wasn't. So
no.
I think-
range
Because I
weapon.
feel
Dave
It would be
actually-
range weapon.
Oh yeah, there was one for range. Sorry. So Dave went 4-0 at this tournament. However, the person who came second, whose list we'll look at, went 3-1, but won a category. And then the person who won the whole tournament went 4-0 and won a category. So Dave unfortunately did not win any categories.
Unimpeachably dank with his amazing dwarves. Well done, Dave.
Yeah.
Right,
Shout out
let's-
again. Thank you very much for all your contributions to the podcast. Anything in
David
Scotland
Reed.
that happens, we just ask you. And
I
you-
remember when I played against David Reed in 2017.
I remember when I played against David
on a
Reed in Desolation
tournament.
of Stockport 2016, and I thought I'd won the game because I didn't understand game conditions, and he very patiently told me, "No, you haven't won. The game isn't over yet." And I,
What? Whoa!
So
wah, wah.
Poor Stevie.
let's look at our second place list. We've got another Angmar. We've got Ross Wolstenholme leading the Witch King, 3 might, 15 will in total, 2 fate, crown and horse. Fairly standard kind of Angmar build. 6 orcs with shield, 5 orcs with spear, 1 orc with banner and spear, 2 wild wargs and a spectre. Then he's got the tainted, something we see a bit less often, leading 5 orcs with shield, 5 orcs with spear, 2 more wargs, and another spectre. What category do we reckon this one won?
I mean, magic, probably.
Yeah.
I really like this list. I can see the weaknesses in it, but something about taking the double rate. No one ever takes double rates in Angmar. It just doesn't happen.
It's
Is
because you
that
don't get the
very-
budget. You don't get the budget
I-
right, do you?
Well, I pretty much never see it, and also I think the tainted doesn't actually add loads on. If you could have the Shadlord in Angmar, you'd see double rate Angmar. But
Yeah,
the tainted doesn't
that'd be
actually
crap.
add loads, and then it means you generally can't have. Like, I've seen people use Angmar with the tainted and not the Witch King. People generally want to have one or the other, but having the tainted over like Burder is definitely a choice. But I respect and adore it because I love the tainted on horse, and I think it's one of the nicest rates. So, well done, Ross. Show
Yeah,
them how it's done.
it's a really cool model. It really does
It
have
is a
the
very cool
seeping
model.
decay kind of. It looks as though that rule applies
It's all
to it.
droopy.
Yeah, that's what she
Cool.
said.
What?
Our first place list was Mark Capewell with Rivendell. He took Rivendell Knights with Elrond, horse heavy armor, 1 Rivendell Knight naked, 11 Knights with shield, and 1 Knight with shield and banner. And
Yeah, I've
I was
seen this
informed
before.
that this list won the shooting category. No,
Yeah, you gotta
either
drop
the
the
shooting
shields.
or cavalry.
Damn, that
I
new
think you're
Elrond
right.
model looks really sick, doesn't
Oh, sorry.
it?
All-
Hey!
all elves look the same.
Well played, John. You got me. You knew I'd say something.
Yeah, you spranked you good there.
I'm
That's
pretty
funny.
sure that's because there was a Glorfindel win last week or the week before, maybe. I can't remember. Anyway, Rivendell Knights. What can we say? It goes pew pew. 500 points. Not many people are going to come at you with blinding light because if you've got Círdan, you don't have much else in your army. You can maybe get Elrond or Gilgalad or a captain, but then you run out of warband space. No one's going to be taking the Shadow Lord. AOL, you could see at 500 points. That's probably my concern.
You'd be unlikely
honestly,
to see
like,
Gandalf.
Yeah.
Honestly, 13 bows can probably just outshoot.
Yeah.
AOL. You just have to walk into range. They only hit you on 5s. There at 500 points, AOL is not getting more than about like maximum like 11 bows, 12 maybe at a push, and then you just wander into range and just blast them.
Yeah. Anyway, you start
you're much better at shooting. For me, the only choice essentially is: do you take a banner or do you just go for an extra knight? This list can just overpower things with the 15th model.
Yeah.
Largely, it's academic. I don't think it's not a lot better.
In the situation where it doesn't change your break point, I think it's worth taking a banner, which in this points level it doesn't.
Yeah, it's true.
But yeah, it is very minutia related of what's better, a reroll or a model.
Going up to a 14th bow and an extra actual Riven Knights are pretty much the Apache gunship of good side troops. Like they kind of do everything. And they're amazingly strong. Like as an individual model. So actually in this case, another model is potentially a worthwhile. But like I said, it's just academic, it's really just preference.
Yeah. I really love Oh, go ahead.
What were we saying about the depression of walking up the board into heavy gunfire?
Yeah, my first ever tournament back at Desolation of Storm. Non-ironically, I took Rivendell Knights to my first ever tournament, and in my first game, I realized how depressing they are because either your opponent has blinding light or they don't, and if they do, you have a sad time, and if they don't, they have a sad time.
Sad no matter what.
Having said that, if the other players are winning with such scummy lists as Angmar and throwing axe spam Kingdom of Moria, they get what they deserve, right?
If they both went 4-0, clearly they didn't play each other, but I think the Kingdom of Moria would really not like this list.
No. I mean, Barlin can march, but ultimately...
So can the captain.
Yeah.
To be fair, if you get into range and if it happens the right way, falls the right way, you manage to run into range, march into range and get a turn of throwing axis, you could pin him down that way, but it doesn't look great for the dwarves.
Now, interestingly enough, rules interaction, big tangent, between Elrond and Barlin, the way they've ruled it is that the points of foresight have to be spent before the reroll, which is completely contradictory to how banner rolls work. Because they did FAQ it, but they FAQ'd it totally the wrong way, in my opinion. I know, obviously, I'm an Elrond fanboy.
Well, but I mean, I would argue that foresight points are probably too good anyway, so I don't mind them getting made worse in one.
Yeah.
Well, technically, there's a couple of ways you can reroll priorities: Barlin and Thrall and Durin.
It's such an efficient way of using your resources to amend the only thing that very few models and factions can amend in the game.
Yeah. Well, there is a tangent, I think
priority.
D6 is too many. I think it should be D3+1 because then it's more consistent. 4 is lots, 2 isn't that many, but 1 versus 6 is so many. You can influence so many priorities in some games with 6 at the point.
I'll settle for 2d6+6.
As a White Council enjoyer and someone who owns a to-be-built Rivendell Knight army, I could settle for that.
Rivendell Knights aren't meta, John. Don't take them.
Hey, I won them as a painting reward. I'm just a hobbyist.
Shall we move on to the next slide?
Get out of here.
That is the next slide after our tournaments of the weekend, correctly updated from Masters, supposedly. Mordor has taken the lead with 5 GBHL 100 podiums. Isengard in second. Dark Denizens, let's be real, the Spider Queen is in third. 2 from Dave himself. Riders on 3, Angmar on 2, Dragon Emperor on 2, and then a smattering of armies on 1. Any surprises or any shocks here?
Same as last week, innit? We haven't had any hundreds. So.
Anything we think should be here that isn't really showing up?
Salt on Loth, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not seeing Assault on Lothlorien or Lothlorien itself.
Lothlorien, I would be amazed if neither of those features by the end of the year at least once. I think Loth probably will get 1 or 2 at least.
Also, when the higher points tournaments kick in, Lothlorien should really be sticking around, as maybe should Rivendell for a kid and drop in with Glorfindel. the kind of thing that you see sometimes.
Higher points, good soups become stronger, elves and dwarves. And if you're doing elves and dwarves, you're using Galadriel because she's great, most likely.
Yeah.
And yeah, that really lands well at 800 and higher. So as we get above 700, I expect to see a bit more of that.
Yeah.
Let's have
When
a
will
look
this
at
army of Dunland meta end?
let's have a look at 90s as well. Similar sort of picture, except we have Minas Tirith, Rivendell, AOL kind of storming into the picture.
Yeah,
it's kind of fitting the trends that we saw last year. Minas Tirith really dominating at the 90 sort of level, not really converting into many kind of 100 podiums.
It's nice to see a good variation, though, isn't it? Like,
Minas Tirith, yeah. Minas Tirith is popular with, like, it's a beginner-friendly army, and so is Mordor. The difference is Mordor scales into an extremely competitive piece of late, high skill expression pieces. Essentially, ring wraiths and platinum Minorians are part of the list. Whereas Minas Tirith never really hits those kinds of heights. Like you could. I mean, I know JHI podiumed 100 with them last year as part of a soup at 1,000 points using Boromir and Fountain Court and Galadriel and Legolas and Guahir, and you're like, okay, but like Minas Tirith, you can podium with them. I know people did with Pure last year, but it's just tough. They don't tend to hold up that well into actually really strong lists, and they don't have a lot of answers to lists with a lot of tools. They're just like, we're a pretty good line, and we have a couple of really powerful pieces that aren't super nuanced. That's the issue with them, is you don't have loads of control. And if you go pure anyway, if you ally them, there are other issues, but for my money, that's the problem. That's why they consistently good in 90s, because the average strength of list is lower. That's why, for me.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's move now to the final part of the show, everybody's favorite section. This week we have 28 comments to go through. Some of these are replies, so we're not going through all of them, but yeah, the podcast is popular, so thank you to all our adoring fans. Stephen can hardly leave the house now, just hounded by paparazzi. Let's look at the first comments. Carson Howard, friend of the pod from across the pond, says another fantastic pod. He'll have to look into the One Ring and looking forward to next week's podcast. So thank you for commenting weekly, Carson. We do appreciate it. And yeah, I think looking into the One Ring role-playing game that not Stephen mentioned last week is definitely something that I want to do as well. So if you do get a chance to look into it, let us know in the comments kind of how it goes. The Golems Gamers, our friendly rivals from the South Coast, equally good, competitive MESBG GBHL podcast. Give them a watch. Say Denby with a beard goes kind of hard.
It's the only reason why I'm not actually legally allowed to grow facial hair. So for reference, this is about 5 days of not shaving, is because if I did, the entire world would just be at my beck and call from how devastatingly attractive I am. And that is Matt Light. So
Tom Locke says, thanks for the feature on your pod, truly honoured. I believe this Tom Locke was the chap with the incredible Minas Morgul board. Yeah,
it was absolutely insane.
Yeah.
He also sent me some work in progress, but I haven't had a chance to look at them yet.
David Jackson 39 says, great pod. 2 questions. Can we get more tactical breakdowns of Masters games? And 2, was there discussion about a GBHL Ardacon team in the end? So I know you and Matt replied in the comments, Dave.
Yeah, so regarding the tactical breakdown of the Masters games, there are some that I remember very well, which might be interesting, that I could break down. There are some that, I mean, the thing is, it's quite in depth. Like I could theoretically do that. To what people want to see is another question. Like I could do it as maybe a separate video or something if people are interested. But I'd have to see. I'd have to see some concrete evidence before putting in the amount of work that would take, I think.
How many likes, Dave? How many likes?
If there's a demand, comments or whatever, then I could get behind that idea. Regarding the second point, there was a private discussion between several masters whilst very drunk at a masters social about the possibility of a GBHL super team for Ardacon. So, keep your eyes peeled on that one, because I think that might be happening assuming we all end up going to Ardacon. I will be
Unfortunately,
trying
FIFA, which is the Federation for the Independent Fangorn Adjudicators, have said that it's not okay to have a super team at Ardacon.
So is that a joke?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm going to cut out all of us laughing and just put silence after.
I'm going to make it.
Is
I'm
that
going
a
to try and
joke?
make it happen, because I'm going to try and pick up a ticket if I'm
The
going
only
at all.
JP
If I'm going.
says that Matt is a good guest, gave the pod a 6 out of 10, saying would listen again. Well, hopefully you enjoy this week's episode. David Martin says, love the pod. How viable do you feel the Avenger bolt thrower is in competitive play? Curious about any ways to make Minas Tirith as able to compete with the best as possible. I think we touched on this briefly, didn't we?
Yeah. Problem with the bolt thrower is it's unreliable. So if you want reliability, you need to take 2 of them, and if you're taking 2 of them, you're investing pretty heavily. I do think if you're running pure Minas Tirith, the Boromir, Madril, Turin at 800, you can throw in 2 bolt throwers, and that's actually solid. You can get like 46 models and a pretty heavy shooting presence, because obviously bolt throwers come with a what's the word? They come with a siege veteran but 2 crew, which means that those 4 crew members count towards your bow limit, so you can get like 1 or 2 extra rangers. So you end up with a pretty heavy shooting presence. The problem is you can't. They become kind of worthless once you join combat. Once combat starts, and it makes your play a little one-dimensional. But strength 7 is good, and if you can get them on a raised position where they can shoot down at your opponent's spearmen, that is actually really good. The difficulty is getting value out of them once combat starts, because as with any good shooting, combat fucks you over, because good won't shoot into combat and evil will. I've often thought that if the Avenger bolt thrower was like a Mordor siege weapon, you'd see a lot of it, probably.
That's what I was going to say. Is its limiting factor to me is that it's on the good side.
So what about the second part of David's question? How do we make Minas Tirith? What is the best way to
Boromir, Madril flavor?
Boromir, Madril was like the core. I mean, I've tried. So I actually tried a version of it with Saruman the White allied in not too long ago, against in a practice game against a friend of the podcast, Mr. David Clubley. David Clubley in the Daily Bungle. I liked it, but also the numbers get very tight. When you start allying stuff into Minas Tirith, the numbers become a problem. But I did think that there was some proper potential there. I think maybe the problem was I just didn't quite play it right. But I don't know. Allying in White Council works. Allying with I personally think the thing that Minas Tirith really wants is some kind of control. And you don't get that any other way, really. Like Rohan allies is a common one, or like I've played it with Fiefdoms allies, which is great. You can get the 5/6 pikes. It's kind of neat and fun if you run with Imrahil and Boromir together, because those 2 bonuses stack. But it just doesn't give you the control. I found when I ran it with Saruman, Boromir, Saruman, Madril, and what was my other hero? Oh, Beregond, that was it. I was able to have a bit more control, and yeah, I liked that list. I think I could probably make it work at GBHL 100. It's one of my short lists for Gates of Gondolin, which is in a few weeks. But also, yeah, numbers become an issue when you run that kind of list. So it's difficult to say. Pure may actually just be the best way to do it. Just spam as many models as you can at 800.
Is Gondolin 800 or is it 700?
Gondolin is 800.
Lawrence P says, love the content.
I'm pretty certain
you
that's
too, Lawrence.
a paid shill account.
But... yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Oh. Guardians of Wiltshire, my boss, says, really enjoyed the pod again, lads, and always nice to hear Matt's beautiful tones. He does have a really nice voice. That was the main thing I noticed about listening to the podcast last week, was he's just very well spoken, enunciated, and it sounds nice. I wasn't just winning a 90 FYI, I also got very drunk the night before for my end of hockey season dinner. Well done, Dewey. Also, underneath your comment, you also said something about reviewing the lists anyway. We're not going to stroke your ego by doing that. We don't have the time, unfortunately.
The So this is our league
Overlord.
coordinator making more excuses about why he wasn't at the Masters to TO it himself. We've heard it all before, my friend. Don't worry about it.
David Jackson asks another question. Matt was starting to give a great breakdown as to why Ash's approach was incorrect versus Eastlings. That's referring to striking fight 5 heroes being outdiced. What would the correct approach have been? Matt kind of gives a bit of an answer. Doesn't necessarily that it's hugely correct or incorrect. It's just that mathematically isn't a resource 5 plan. David understands him and then asks, so really it's just a tough matchup for kind of Suladan Witch King, regardless of the approach. Is that fair to say, do you think, Dave, into Dragon Emperor?
I agree.
Barn door struggles.
It's not for free. I do think that Ash did play it wrong, but not specifically on the tactic. I think he's playing football, and I watched him play it. Well, he told me where he basically looking at the board, he opted to fight in a choke point, which is always a mistake against the Dragon Emperor, especially a 38, like a fairly trim 38 model version of it. I thought that because it's Fog of War, Matt can't afford to use his Dragon Knights because a single black dot could immediately lose you points or compel. Like the Dragon Knights can't really be in the fight because if they are, they're vulnerable as heck to the magic that Ash has, and if they're on the front, if you transfix them, they're just free kills. So you can't use them. So he's lost 2 of his pieces that actually do the killing against the Black Numenorians. And that means that Ash has the strength advantage. And if you don't fight him in a choke point between a building and a forest, you can take off some of his side flanks. And then what you can do is you use your heroes to fight. Like you don't even need to strike necessarily. Like, yeah, you're running the risk of losing your horse, but if you just put them into like the guys who have had their pikes taken away, it's like, yeah, they're fight 5 and they'll probably shield, but like the Mathasaran has 3 dice, this guy with a reroll, this guy's got 2 dice with a reroll. He might win, but also if the mouth wins, you're not really risking anything. It's like picking advantages and trying to you don't even have to strike to do that. You just want to try and pick away at the numbers of the Dragon Emperor in the safest possible way. That's what I would do.
I did watch a significant amount of the game. I think from memory, Ash did charge Suladan in, and he got 1 banged, which is obviously a big issue.
That can happen. Suladan is the one you have to be the most careful with because he's D5. Suladan, realistically, I don't know which target Matt chose. Suladan is a pretty good target because if he fights, he's in D5. But the other thing is Suladan also provides an awful lot whilst not fighting, so that's the trade-off.
Yeah.
The main issue was the choice of battlefield, not the choice of combat choice.
Fighting pikes in a choke point historically has gone bad for everyone who's ever done it, and Ash Wolger met the Macedonian Wrath.
Cool. This will tickle your pickle, Dave. Thomas Yeager asks, wouldn't the 3rd and 2nd place lists be better off taking Witch King with Crown, 3 Might, 2 Fate, and a horse, 130 points, over the Shadow Lord, and swapping the 8 trackers for 4 more Black Nums/Morannas? I don't see that the Shadow Lord's ability is that useful when most of your troops are D6 plus. Also, can someone explain why Black Nums supported by Morannas are so good? Lastly, why is it better to take an Orc warrior with the banner and not give the banner to a Morannan Orc?
Okay, so so the Witch King with that setup is the same cost, but also he has 10 will. He doesn't give you anti-shooting, which is the point of the Shadow Lord. So the Shadow Lord brings the ability to disregard the main weakness of the Spider Queen, which is shooting, and that is an important part of the list. You can't just give your opponent free access to shoot the Spider Queen, because especially against something like this on Lothlorien, like we didn't see any Isengard crossbows because I think everyone was expecting anti-shooting. But if we had, and we hadn't taken Shadow Lord, that list would just get shot to pieces by crossbows.
Yeah,
like it's not. It's
or
like
even
a tactical
AOL.
Necessity. Well, AOL, that's the thing. If I was actually in my final game, I was playing as Assault on Lothlorien, and if I hadn't had my Shadow Lord able to keep my Spider Queen safe, like very quickly she'd just die to throwing daggers into combat, like really quickly.
Yeah.
It's just it's not really a proper option. And just very quickly, Black Numenorians support by Morannons is insanely good because they're both cheap troops and they complement each other perfectly. Black Numenorians have high courage and fight 4, and they have terror. They got the front line. And Morannons provide strength 4, which is one of the best features you can give to an army troop in a grind, because D6 is like the golden rule. D6 is the best. On average, it's the best value defense. Going from 5 to 6 is better value. It gives you that ability to shrug off strength 3, and strength 4 gives you the advantage. So, for example, I was saying about just a second ago, Black Numenorians backed by Morannons versus Dragon Emperor Easterlings with 2 pikes. Even though there's more dice, they're more likely to win. Having strength 4 on your side makes such a huge difference, just in winning fights over the long term. Finally,
I'll answer
Warrior
that
with the
last
banner is
question.
literally just to save points.
Save points. Yeah. Damn it.
Sorry. You don't want to use it. Like, I haven't taken a spear. It's not going to contribute to the fight at all. It's literally just a slightly cheaper way to have your banner be held up by a guy. That's it.
Yeah. He shouldn't be fighting is the answer. And if he gets sniped, you just pass him to the next model. So yeah. David Gravy 2 says, can we have a guest host doing an impersonation of Denby every week? I am for this. That would be great.
Every time we have a guest, we'll make him be you.
Yeah. If anybody, for example, James Goebel, another floppy-haired, glasses-wearing wanker, would like to come on the podcast, if you look vaguely like me, just drop us a message. We'll get you a guest appearance for 5 minutes or so. I hate Rummel, clearly an Orifin fanboy, and says, hi all, love the content. There's a tournament coming up in New Zealand soon at 650 points, playing Recon, Divide, Storm, Command, and Hold Ground. What armies can you see doing well? My friend...
Recon, Storm the Camp, and Divide. That's all 3 maneuvering scenarios.
Yeah, you need a lot of mobility if you're not taking a list with a high amount of mobility.
Goblin Town.
Recon, yes. Divide, yes. Storm, yes.
Storm the Camp is just a draw, but yeah.
You can still get leader VPs, maybe.
Well, they're just going to stay in their camp if you have the scribe.
True.
They have to, otherwise you just lose. They'll just lose.
Command, yeah, and Hold Ground. Yeah, I mean, Golden Town could do really well there. I think you need March or a method of getting up the board for a lot of those scenarios. You could afford to take a leader who you just sit at the back because, yeah. Which 5 scenarios would you choose for a tournament? I mean,
think the ones from the one earlier were pretty great.
Those would be my 5 as well.
The only thing I'd change is Capture Control and then maybe Divide and Conquer instead of Recon. But actually, I still really like Recon. So Hold Ground, Recon, Capture Control. What are the ones? Destroy the Supplies.
They do Lords.
Lords of Battle, yeah. I mean, I personally, I'm a sucker for Contest of Champs, but I think Lords is fairer.
I'd like to just do Lords or To the Death at the end of the day because my brain's usually fried.
Heirlooms.
Also, shout out New Zealand.
6 rounds of heirlooms.
We need to get some New Zealand tournaments in.
Send us the results for that tournament if you like. At me on Facebook. Battle Camper Home says, "My God, my meme made it in an honor." Shout out Battle Camper. If you haven't watched his videos, what are you doing? This guy drives around the country and paints and plays games in locations. He camps out in his van. He's got a lovely dog named Kiwi. Yeah, he also does his own music, as far as I'm aware. I think he makes it himself, which is really cool. So yeah, shout out Battle Camper. You're welcome for featuring on the memes. Bravery is a virtue, says looking forward to City of Kings and hopefully getting to play against one of you. Well, hopefully you don't get to play against me because I'm using an army for the first time and I will lose. It's my first GBHL 100 and only my 2nd tournament, so fully expect to lose, but hopefully learn from the best players in the league. Well, John and I are only top 20 from last year, but Dave's very good.
All 3 of us are going to be there, to be fair.
Please come up and say hi. I did. I'm not going to dox you.
Trying to work out who this is.
I did work out his first name, I think. So yeah, please come up and say hi and remind me who you are. Because if you come up and you just go hi, I'm like,
I'm Mr. Bravery.
Yeah, just say I commented on the podcast or whatever. Yeah, come and say hi. I'll buy you a drink, you buy me a drink or whatever. You know, free drinks all around. Charge it to Ali's
cheap
card.
drinks. It may be a conservative club, but there are cheap drinks. I'll give it that.
There are cheap drinks. Yeah, that's where the tax cuts are going. Remember to comment, like, share, subscribe, support your Hobbit hobby. Go check out Seventh City, sell your second-hand armies you're not using and buy new ones. Buy your Lolcana stuff from them, etc. Also, just go and say hi because they're lovely people who work there. And stay chittery.
Chitter chitter.
Chitter, gang.
Chitter, chitter.